It started with a simple observation. One moment, I was sitting on the edge of our bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to unwind after a long week. The next, I heard a soft but unmistakable sound, her laugh. Lena's laugh. But it wasn't just any laugh. This was different. It was warmer, more free-spirited. It was the kind of laugh you hear when someone has let down their guard completely, when they're not just enjoying the moment, they're lost in it. I didn't think much of it at first. She had just gotten home from an evening out with some coworkers. We had both agreed that it was probably a good idea for her to take a break from the everyday grind, to have some time for herself. So when she walked in through the front door, I was expecting the usual. A quick peck on the cheek, maybe some talk about her day. But instead, I heard that laugh. And in the next instant, I heard another voice joining in. It wasn't loud. Just two people, talking, laughing, but something about the way the sound echoed from downstairs hit me. It made me freeze in place. I wasn't used to feeling this uneasy, especially not with Lena. We had been together for years. Our relationship was built on communication, trust. Or at least, I thought it was. I sat there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I go downstairs and join them? Should I just let it be? But the thought of it, it gnawed at me. There was something unsettling about it, something wrong. So, I stood up, walked slowly to the stairs, and peeked down into the living room. Lena was sitting on the couch, facing a man I'd never seen before. He had his back turned to me, but I could make out his features: dark hair, sharp jawline, a slight smirk that didn't seem quite as friendly as I'd expect from a stranger. I stayed there in the hallway for a moment, not wanting to interrupt. The conversation was casual at first, just typical small talk, nothing suspicious. But then it shifted. The energy in the room changed. The way they leaned in closer to one another, how their voices dropped as they spoke, it felt intimate. There was something in the way he looked at her. I couldn't quite place it, but it was more than just friendly. It wasn't the way you look at someone you're simply talking to. No, it was different. There was an unspoken connection, something electric between them that I couldn't ignore. I told myself to stop overthinking it. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But the feeling only grew stronger as I stood there. Lena laughed again, that same carefree laugh, and for a moment, it sounded like she was enjoying herself more than I had seen in a long time. It was like I was listening to a side of her I didn't recognize. I took a step back, retreating from the stairs, and sat down on the couch in the living room. The unease was now a knot in my stomach, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The idea that something was happening, something I wasn't a part of, was creeping in, and it felt like the floor beneath me was slowly starting to crack. I didn't want to confront her right away. I wasn't ready to make accusations without knowing more, but the thoughts kept swirling in my mind, faster and faster. I told myself I'd wait, just a little longer. I would give it a few days and see how things played out. I wasn't going to let one laugh, one conversation, throw me into a whirlwind of doubt. But as time went on, I started noticing more. Subtle things at first: Lena staying up later, getting more messages, her attention drawn to her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Nothing overt, nothing obvious, but enough for me to wonder if I was starting to lose something I didn't even know was slipping away. And then, one night, as I walked into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, I saw it. A text. From him. I wasn't proud of it, but I looked. The message was brief, just 2 words, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. I miss you. I didn't know what to think. The world suddenly felt heavy, as if it had tilted on its axis. The room seemed to close in around me. I felt trapped in a moment I wasn't ready for. It wasn't the text itself that stung the most. It was the realization of how easily it had been exchanged. The ease with which he slid into her life, into her world, while I had been so focused on everything else. Was I just too comfortable? Too complacent in our routine? I didn't confront her right then. I couldn't. But the doubt had been planted, and there was no ignoring it now. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, the message echoing in my mind. I miss you. It was so simple, so casual, but it hit me like a wall. The next morning, Lena was her usual self. She kissed me on the cheek, like nothing had changed. She got dressed for work, gave me a smile, and told me she'd be back late. The normalcy of it all made it worse. The lie of it. How could everything feel so normal when everything in my mind was falling apart? As she left, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was imagining things, or if I was slowly witnessing the unraveling of everything we had built. And that's when it started, the uncertainty. The questions, the whispers in my mind that I couldn't silence. Was this the beginning of the end? Or had I just missed the warning signs? The next few days felt like I was walking on a tightrope, balancing between the life I knew and the one I was afraid was starting to unravel. I tried to keep my distance, not wanting to bring up anything that could cause a scene. But every little thing Lena did made my heart race. The way she answered her phone, quickly turning away when I came into the room, or how she seemed more distracted when we were together. I kept telling myself to stay calm, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. One evening, Lena came home late again. She had a glass of wine in hand and a light buzz in her voice. I tried to play it cool, asking her how the night went, but she seemed off. She gave a vague answer, something about her coworkers and a long discussion about work. But something was missing in her words. The warmth wasn't there, just the hollow formality of a routine answer. I didn't push her. I didn't want to seem suspicious, paranoid. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let go of that text message. I miss you. The words echoed in my mind, and every time I saw her smile, it didn't feel real anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just a feeling, it was like a constant presence in the room. That night, as Lena got ready for bed, I stood at the edge of the doorway, watching her brush her hair. It was as if she didn't even notice me standing there, lost in her own world. I wanted to ask her about the text, about Ethan, but the words wouldn't come. What if I was wrong? What if I was just being insecure, reading too much into nothing? I couldn't risk losing her over my own doubts, could I? But then, out of nowhere, Lena spoke. You've been quiet lately. Are you okay? I froze. The question caught me off guard. It wasn't accusatory, just concerned. But I knew it wasn't genuine. I could feel it. She was trying to make me feel like everything was fine. It was as if she was trying to maintain some illusion, some mask, and I was the fool playing along. I'm fine, I replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was, I wasn't. She seemed satisfied with my answer, offering a half smile before turning back to the mirror. It was then that I realized she had no idea what was really going on inside my head. She thought everything was normal, that I didn't know. But the truth was, I did know. I just didn't have the courage to face it. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind was racing, caught between the urge to confront her and the fear of what I might uncover. What if I was wrong? What if this was all just in my head? But the truth was clear. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The texts, the laughter, the late nights. There was more to this than I could understand, and I knew that the longer I waited, the harder it would be to face. I needed answers. But the question was, could I handle the truth, whatever it was? The next morning, I tried to act like nothing was wrong. Lena and I exchanged our usual morning greetings, kissed each other goodbye, and I watched her leave for work, as I always did. But today felt different. It wasn't just the usual humdrum of a Monday. It was heavier, like the weight of something unknown pressing down on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the life I had been living was an illusion, and I was just beginning to see the cracks in the walls. I spent the day distracted, unable to focus. I couldn't stop thinking about what Lena and Ethan had shared that night. It wasn't just the text that haunted me. It was the way they looked at each other. The intimacy, the comfort in their closeness. It felt like something I couldn't touch, something I wasn't part of anymore. And it was tearing me apart. I knew I needed to do something, but I wasn't sure what. Confronting her was a dangerous game. What if she denied everything? What if I had misread the situation completely? The thought of it made me nauseous. Still, I couldn't sit back and do nothing. My mind wouldn't let me. I decided to wait. I needed more proof. I needed to know if this was all in my head or if I had stumbled onto something real. So, when Lena came home that night, I acted normal. Too normal. I didn't want to raise suspicion. But as soon as she walked in, I noticed something different about her. She wasn't tipsy like usual after an evening out, but she had that same distracted look in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there, like she was somewhere else, mentally. Her thoughts weren't with me, and I felt it. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. We ate, made small talk, but it wasn't like before. There was no warmth, no easy laughter. The silence between us felt oppressive, like a heavy fog that neither of us could break through. I couldn't help but glance at her phone every now and then, but she was guarding it closely, almost protectively. It was a small thing, but it didn't sit right with me. After dinner, she excused herself to the bedroom. I've got a lot of work to catch up on. she said, her voice strained. Maybe I imagined it, but it didn't sound like the truth. It sounded like a rehearsed excuse. I sat in the living room for a while, the silence now suffocating. I tried to watch TV, tried to distract myself, but it was no use. The feeling in my gut was back, stronger than ever. It felt like a countdown to something I couldn't stop. I couldn't just sit there anymore. I made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to come to me. I wasn't going to play the fool and let her weave her web of excuses any longer. I had to know, once and for all. So, I grabbed my phone and texted Ethan. I didn't know what to say at first. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. What if he knew I knew? What if this backfired completely? Finally, I typed, I know what's been going on between you and Lena. I need to talk. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, waiting. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe an apology, maybe a denial, maybe nothing at all. But what came next was something I didn't expect. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a reply. Let's talk. But not here. You know where. I couldn't believe it. My hands were shaking as I stared at the message. I had no idea what to do. Should I go? Should I confront him? What was I walking into? The truth was, I was scared. Scared of what I might find. Scared of what it meant for my life, for my marriage. But there was no turning back now. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the door. The drive to the meeting place felt like it took an eternity. I didn't know if I was prepared for what was waiting for me, but I knew I had no choice. I couldn't let this go on any longer. When I arrived, I spotted him immediately. Ethan. He was standing by his car, leaning against it like he'd been waiting for me. His expression was calm, almost too calm. But there was something in his eyes, something that told me this was far from over. I approached slowly, my heart pounding louder with every step. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. Let's talk, he said, his voice low and steady. And just like that, everything changed. I took a deep breath before stepping closer. Ethan's eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read, but there was a certain calmness to him that unnerved me. The night air felt cold against my skin, and for a moment, I couldn't decide whether it was the chill of the evening or the chill of what was about to happen. So, you know, he said, his voice almost casual, as if we were just two guys talking about something trivial. His posture was relaxed, but there was a tension in the way he stood. He was prepared for this, like he'd done it before. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. I know everything. Ethan didn't flinch, didn't even look guilty. Instead, he just shrugged, a small smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. You sure about that? You might not have all the pieces yet. My heart raced. The words hit me like a punch, but I held my ground. What does that mean? What's really going on with Lena? He took a step closer, his gaze never leaving mine. What do you think is happening? I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. I'm not an idiot, Ethan. I saw the texts. I know you two are, more than just friends. For a moment, there was silence. Then he finally spoke, his voice lower, more deliberate. It's not what you think. It never was. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I didn't want to lose control, not yet. Then what is it exactly? What are you telling me? Ethan let out a soft laugh, his tone almost sympathetic. You've been blind, man. You've been so wrapped up in your own world that you didn't even notice what was happening right under your nose. Lena's not the woman you think she is. She never was. Those words stung. It felt like he was shattering everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I had never questioned Lena before. She was my wife. I trusted her completely. But now, hearing it from Ethan's mouth, everything felt like it was falling apart. What do you mean by that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan stepped back, letting the silence hang for a moment. You really don't get it, do you? You've been living in a bubble. Lena's not just bored. She's been seeking something more. She found it with me. I felt like the ground was slipping beneath my feet. You're lying, I spat. This is some sick game you're playing. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled faintly, a smile that felt too knowing, too familiar. I'm not lying. Lena's been telling me everything. You haven't been paying attention to her, to us, and she started finding what she needed elsewhere. I wanted to scream, to shout at him, but something in the pit of my stomach told me I already knew the truth. Something had changed in Lena, something subtle but powerful, and I had been blind to it. I had let it slip right through my fingers. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice softening slightly. But it's not my fault. Lena, she's the one who made this happen. I just didn't want to see her fall apart anymore. I took a step back, trying to process his words. My mind was racing, but it was like trying to catch water with my hands. It kept slipping away from me. What now? I managed to say. Ethan's gaze flickered. You have to decide. Do you want to keep living in the dark, or do you want to face what's really happening? He paused, then added, Lena's not yours anymore, man. Not in the way you think. I stood there, frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. My mind was spinning, but one thing was crystal clear now. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. The life I had built was nothing but a facade. And Lena? She wasn't the woman I thought she was. Not anymore. The words Ethan said kept echoing in my head long after I walked away from him. My mind was spinning. Lena wasn't the woman I thought she was. She had been hiding something, and I had been blind to it. The betrayal was like a fog, clouding everything I thought I knew. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. I had to think, to process everything. The drive back to the house was a blur. Every turn felt like I was moving through a dream, but I knew I couldn't escape it. I had to face her. I had to face this. When I finally got home, the house was eerily quiet. Lena wasn't back yet. It gave me a small window of time to gather myself, to prepare for whatever came next. I stood in the living room, staring at the empty space where we had shared so many moments together. The picture frames on the walls, the little details of our life. None of it felt real anymore. The silence was suffocating. Every step I took felt heavier than the last. I had no idea what to say to her, no idea how to even begin this conversation. How could I confront her without tearing everything apart? I heard the door open. Lena stepped inside, dropping her keys on the counter. She looked up, startled to see me standing there, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. She opened her mouth, like she was about to say something, but stopped herself. It was as if she was trying to read my expression. What's going on? She asked, her voice cautious. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I swallowed it down. We need to talk, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She furrowed her brow, stepping into the living room. About what? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. About you and Ethan. Her face faltered for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. I saw it. The guilt. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice a little too quick, too defensive. I didn't flinch. I know everything, Lena. The texts. The way you've been acting. I took a step closer. How long has this been going on? Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw a flash of panic in them. But she quickly masked it with a calmness that didn't belong. You're overreacting. It's not what you think. I couldn't hold it back anymore. Don't lie to me, Lena. I saw the text. I saw how you looked at him. How he looked at you. My voice cracked with frustration. You've been hiding something from me. She opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. I trusted you. I continued, my voice thick with emotion. And now you're telling me I've been living a lie this whole time? Lena's face softened, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, maybe fear. She took a step toward me, but I stepped back. Please, just listen, she started. I never meant for you to find out like this. But I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. Not when everything I believed had crumbled in an instant. You can't just explain this away, I said, shaking my head. You can't take it back. The silence that followed was thick, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to answer. I could see her struggling with the words, trying to find a way to make it right, but I already knew there was no way back from this. Not now. Not after everything I had seen. And then, she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. But I couldn't bring myself to believe her anymore. Her apology hung in the air like a foreign language, too late, too hollow. I stood there, frozen, as her words bounced around my head, but I couldn't process them. What did she think? That I would just forgive her, wipe the slate clean, and pretend like nothing happened? It wasn't that easy. It never would be. Lena took a step closer, her eyes filled with what looked like genuine regret. But all I could see was the distance between us, growing with every word. She reached out, as if to touch my arm, but I pulled away instinctively. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan and I. It was just a moment. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Just a moment? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Is that what you're going with? A moment? Her face flushed, and she lowered her eyes, as if the weight of her own guilt was too much to bear. It was more than that. I I was confused, and I pushed you away. I know that doesn't excuse it, but I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to betray you. The room felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on me. I wanted to scream, to shout, to ask her how long it had been going on, but instead, I felt a strange sense of numbness wash over me. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. This wasn't the life we had built together. What did you want, Lena? I asked, my voice shaking. What was it you needed from him that you couldn't get from me? Was it really that easy to just throw us away? She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability I had seen when we first met. No, it wasn't easy, but things between us started to change. I felt like I was invisible to you, like I was fading into the background of your life. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to tell her that I loved her, that I had always been there for her. But how could I, knowing what she had done? How could I justify any of it? I never meant for it to get out of hand, she whispered, stepping closer again. But now I see that I've hurt you more than I ever imagined. I stared at her, the woman I had trusted with everything, the woman I had promised to stand by. How could I reconcile this? How could I ever trust her again? I can't just forget this, Lena, I said, my voice breaking. This isn't something you can just apologize for and make it go away. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I know. I never expected you to forgive me right away. But please, don't give up on me. On us. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Did I want to fix this? Did I want to fight for our marriage? Or was it too late for that? For the first time in a long time, I felt lost. I didn't have the answers. I didn't know where to go from here. I need time, Lena, I said, my voice hoarse. I need to think about this. She nodded again, her face filled with sorrow. I understand. I turned away from her then, needing space, needing air, needing to breathe without the weight of her apology crushing me. As I walked out of the room, I could hear her voice calling after me, but I didn't stop. The words had been said, but I couldn't process them yet. Not until I knew what I was really feeling. The night was unbearable. I couldn't sleep, couldn't shut off my thoughts. They spiraled in every direction, each one worse than the last. Lena's face kept flashing in my mind. Her apology, her desperation, the vulnerability in her eyes. But more than that, I kept hearing Ethan's voice in my head, his cold, knowing words. Lena's not yours anymore. Not in the way you think. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she'd made a mistake, and now she regretted it. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't ignore the reality of what had happened. She wasn't just a victim here. She had made choices. Choices I could never forget. I had to get out of the house. The walls were closing in, and I needed space to think, to breathe. I grabbed my jacket and walked out into the cold night, the chill hitting my skin as I made my way down the street. The fresh air helped clear my head, but the ache in my chest never went away. I walked for what felt like hours, lost in my thoughts. My mind kept jumping from one possibility to the next. What if I couldn't trust her anymore? What if the damage was irreparable? And the most terrifying question of all, could I ever look at her the same way again? I eventually found myself standing at the edge of the park. The swings swayed gently in the wind, and the lights from the nearby street lamps cast long shadows across the ground. I sat on a bench, staring into the darkness, trying to make sense of everything. I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside, detached, as if I didn't recognize the person I'd become. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to reality. It was a message from Lena. I'm sorry. Please don't leave me. I'm here when you're ready to talk. The words stung. She was trying, I knew that, but I couldn't answer her yet. I wasn't ready to face her again, not with everything still hanging in the air, unresolved. The truth was, I didn't know what I was supposed to say. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I turned the phone off and slipped it back into my pocket. The night felt endless, each minute dragging on, and the weight of everything I'd learned felt heavier with every passing second. There was no way back from this. But could I move forward? Could I rebuild what had been broken? I wasn't sure. The thought of confronting her again, of trying to piece things together, seemed impossible. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I had to face it. Face the truth. Face the woman who I thought I knew, but now, I didn't know her at all. And as I sat there, staring into the darkness, I made a decision. I would give myself a week. A week to think, to breathe, to figure out what I wanted. I would give Lena the chance to prove herself, if that was even possible. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, too. About what I was willing to live with. About whether or not I could forgive her, or if I'd be forever haunted by the betrayal. I stood up, feeling the weight of the decision settle into my bones. There was no going back, no undoing what had been done. But there was still a choice to be made. The question was, could I forgive? And if I did, would I ever be able to forget? A week passed, and I did what I needed to do. I thought. I wrestled with the anger, the hurt, and the confusion. I kept replaying everything in my mind, the conversations, the texts, the betrayal, but I also remembered the good times, the quiet moments, the love we had shared. It wasn't easy, but somewhere between the pain and the memories, I began to see things differently. When I finally came back home, the house was silent, waiting. Lena was sitting in the living room, her hands folded in her lap, looking at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I had spent days alone, sorting through my emotions, and now it was time to face her again. I've had some time to think, I said, my voice steady, but carrying the weight of everything I had processed. And I can't just pretend nothing happened. But I also can't just throw everything away. Lena's eyes searched mine, her expression softening, like she was waiting for the final verdict. I could see the relief in her eyes when I didn't immediately walk away. I want to try, I continued. I can't promise things will go back to the way they were, but I'm willing to try. Lena's breath caught, and for the first time in days, a genuine smile touched her lips. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. I don't deserve this, but I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm still the woman you fell in love with. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak for a moment. It's not going to be easy. We'll have to work through this, together. But I'm not ready to give up on us. We stood there, just looking at each other for a moment, letting the silence settle. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Lena took a step toward me, and this time, when she reached out, I didn't pull away. I let her take my hand, feeling the warmth of her touch as we stood in the quiet of our living room. We'll figure it out, I said, squeezing her hand. One step at a time. And just like that, I knew we could rebuild. The road ahead wasn't clear, and it wouldn't be without its challenges. But the trust that had been broken was still there, fragile and needing care. And with time, maybe, just maybe, we could put the pieces back together. For the first time in days, I didn't feel lost anymore. And maybe that was enough for now.